Hello and welcome. This is a battle report for Modulorka, a game by none other than Mr. Modulorka. I found out about this game a little while ago, and after spending some time putting a war gang together, I found someone else who was willing to give it a spin. To be very clear, this is both of our first time with this game, so we made a ton of mistakes. Here's our setup. Normally, you're supposed to draw a primary and a secondary mission, but that was one of our first mistakes. We only drew a primary one, which was to assassinate the enemy's leader. My WARG war gang is a bit of a mixed motley crew. 1 commissar and 3 rebel gobs, 2 engineering gobs, 3 horde gobs, and 2 grot tanks. My main plan is just to have a big blob of gobs moving up and supporting the commissar, who gets buffs when he has patsies nearby, but can also pass off damage, which will make him a bit tankier. Speaking of tanks, I put 1 on each flank so I could advance and pick off targets as needed. My opponent had a full Speed Kultists force, 3 bikers and a boss Bikaz. They were all loaded to the gills with equipment, and his boss alone was something like 17 points in a 40-point game. Turn 1 was mainly just a straight-up advance for my forces, and we let loose some shots and knocked one of the bikers off his bike, but overall it was a poor marksmanship. My opponent was sneakily pushing up, not wanting to commit as those bikes are fairly fragile, and most only had melee weapons. It also wasn't until later in the game that he realized that units could spend both actions moving to really haul across the battlefield. It was also in this turn that we realized that with 2 armor, the tanks literally couldn't be damaged by any weapons that the bikers were carrying. They could be set on fire, which would chip damage away, but only if I didn't extinguish the flames. Even without that realization, his mainly melee forces didn't want to spend both actions moving just to get shot to pieces. So in turn 2, he opted to hold back and wait for my advance, which I obliged. We downed the biker that had previously been knocked off his bike, but the rest of the enemy force was in cover, so either we couldn't see them or we couldn't hit them. Before going down though, the biker sniped off one of my gear gobs. In turn 3, the bikes descended on the goblin front. Between flamethrowers and exploding bikes carrying flame tanks, a good number of the grots dropped. However, there were enough guns on the field to unhorse the speed boss and take him down. The flamer tanks, which damaged the model itself on an aim roll of 5 or better, were particularly deadly. Especially since, with basically all of my grots, they usually needed a 5 or better to hit anyways. Either way, we decided to call the game at that point, as we had run slightly over time and the end seemed a bit inevitable. Despite that, I think we both had a good time trying out this new game system and are going to come back at it again and hopefully make fewer mistakes on our next go-round. And that's all for now. Just remember, we's the best!